What is up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Crowded Lake. Today I'm reading Chapter 18 from a lesson of Practicality by ResidentAnchor on Wattpad. If you'd like to support the author, which I totally think you should, you could do so with the links in the description below, the links back to the AO3 and the original fic. With that being said, here is Chapter 18, Forts and Folly. As surprised as he was that he hadn't worn a hole in the living room carpet yet, Patton kept pacing back and forth. He tried relaxing, but he couldn't sit still. He had off, and Logan suggested trying to regain his strength and letting his pals rest for a day. That meant no cleaning, no cooking, just a full day of doing whatever Patton wanted to do. It was absolutely driving him crazy. He knew he hadn't fooled the others. They were onto him immediately when he tried. He hid it enough, but not completely, it seems. Of course, he was bothered by what happened. A part of him got possessed, and he wasn't happy about that in the least. He felt it, saw it, and even experienced it. While 3 didn't remember much of it, the feeling was still there. Patton was glad he didn't remember looking over at the others through 3's eyes while it happened. But the feeling of it all just... He groaned and stopped, rubbing his hands across his face once more. Patton tried distracting himself. He really had, but his thoughts always went back to that moment. He didn't want to be a weak, defenseless one while everyone ran off preparing to take down some evil creature in a superhero showdown while he sat on the sidelines. He wanted to help protect them. He just didn't know how. Thinking about it wasn't helping, and he promised he'd leave the other versions of him alone. Though, if they could separate themselves willingly, he was sure a few would have popped up and tried smacking him upside the head by how he was working himself up to nothing. Patton gave in and headed down the hall for the 3rd time that day. He knew Logan was working and probably shouldn't be distracted, but something stopped him just as he passed the kitchen and headed for the door at the end of the hall. It never really bothered him before. He was sure Logan would let him in, but Patton didn't feel quite like himself since that day. He eyed Logan's door, part of his brain trying to will it open, but he didn't quite have Logan's abilities. Not that Logan really ever used them. Patton lightly bit his lip as he stared at the door, trying to egg himself on and finally bother the man. He knew talking to Logan would help. Why was he so anxious about it all of a sudden? A sinking feeling grew in the pit of his stomach, and Patton retreated with a sigh once more. Logan was busy and wouldn't even know what to say. He didn't even have his own feelings and thoughts figured out. Patton stopped halfway through the kitchen and glanced at the clock, watching it tick by as it showed it wasn't even noon yet. Patton had gone crazy at this point, and the day had just barely begun. He turned back around and stopped where he had before, listening quietly for any signs Logan was inside. The distance and lack of noise Logan usually made proved to Patton that the silence would only continue unless he was intervened. He stood up straight and marched to the door, giving a quick knock before even thinking about what he was doing. The door swung open quickly, Logan looking at him from a book as if he was been reading, standing there waiting. He smiled up at Patton and took a step out of the way, motioning with his hand, still holding the book, inviting Patton inside. Oh, no, I'm just here to ask, what did you want for lunch? It's a bit early, but if it was something I needed to get from the store, I just wanted to be sure I had the time. Unless you're hungry now, I can cook now. I'm fine at the moment, Patton, but we both know that's not why you're here. Please, do come in. Patton frowned and nodded, walking into Logan's room. The door quietly was shut, and Patton chose to sit on the bed. The room really was the smallest one in the apartment. He wondered how Logan could spend so much time in such a tiny space. Logan sat in his chair by his desk, the only other thing in the room really, and grabbed a bookmark, placing it on an open page. He carefully closed it and placed it to the other side, spinning around. He faced Patton with a serious, stoic look, causing the other to sit up straight. Logan laced his fingers together and leaned back, crossing his legs and placing his hands on his name. They looked at one another as time passed, neither giving in to breaking the silence, until Logan's chair creaked a bit, causing him to sigh. He watched as Patton's eyes flickered around, taking his posture in and eyeing Logan as if he was going to pounce at any second. Patton, I know you've been pacing around the apartment trying to get the courage to talk to me all morning. Let me be the first to say this. Logan's fingers separated and his feet both met the floor as he sat up. I will never judge you. I care very deeply for you, and I know you're going through something I can't even begin to imagine. So if you would like to get something off your chest, please. Patton didn't answer, only blinking owlishly back at him without a sound. You've helped all of us, especially myself. If the roles were reversed, would you not encourage me to come to you? Of course, he finally spoke. Of course I would. I just don't know what I'm feeling. Patton placed a hand on the back of his neck. I think that's the problem. I'm the guy who knows people's feelings, but right now I don't know what I feel. Patton, would you like to know what I was doing before you knocked on my door today? Patton looked up, arm falling into his lap, and he gave a curt nod. Logan spun around and moved his book out of the way, reaching for an old journal he had carried everywhere when they had first moved in. He spun back around and held it up. I was distracting myself from this. Do you know what's in it? Oh, Virgil said you let him read it, but he never really told us what was in it. Logan quickly opened the book and flipped a few pages before holding it out to Patton. The other grabbed it and flipped it around, eyes skimming the pages left open for him. I don't know what I'm looking at. The research I was gathering when we first moved in, Patton. The reason I wrote down everything new about all our powers. What do you think I was researching? Patton looked up at Logan and glanced back down at the notebook, still utterly confused. Names of hospitals and doctors in Logan's neat scroll stared back at him, not painting a clear picture. We may need to get physicals? Logan gave a soft chuckle as a response and shook his head. No, Patton. Those are the names of every doctor, pediatrician, hospital, and any other base I could think of that any of our parents went to. I was looking for a connection between us all. Were we adopted? Had our parents gone to a fertility clinic? Perhaps a sperm bank of some sort? The same doctors or nutritionists? The same hospital maybe, or even the same classes? Or same stores they have shopped at? I covered everything I could think of. Patton looked up at Logan, astonished by the news, and looked back down at the journal. He flipped a page and saw the list, names crossed off and scribbles of possible connections that fell through all across the pages. Patton looked back up at Logan, more amazed that he found all this information and that he even thought to look. Virgil probably glazed over it, either not knowing what it was or not caring since he didn't even want his abilities in the first place. As I'm sure it is apparent, I never found anything. Patton placed the journal down on his lap and watched Logan as he stared at it with a frown. So, what does that mean? It means, as much as it pains me to admit this, it's possible that we were simply born with these abilities and there isn't an answer to where they came from. Or perhaps there is something I've overlooked, but I've exhausted every means I can think of, and we probably will never discover the truth. Logan closed his eyes and turned away. Short of brain biopsy, which definitely isn't an option, I don't think we will ever find out. Well, That's okay. Patton closed the journal and held it up as he inspected every bent corner and worn page of the notebook. We don't always get answers, but that's not a bad thing. Without mysteries to solve, where's the fun in that? Logan looked up and watched Patton carefully, reaching out for his journal. Patton smiled and handed it back over, and Logan looked down at the journal before staring back up at him. Don't you want to know where they came from? Why we have them in the first place? Patton shrugged and smiled. Well, I used to. It's all I wanted to know for so long, but now that I have you guys, knowing isn't that important to me anymore. Maybe we will find out one day. Maybe we won't. Logan smiled a bit and turned to place his journal back on his desk and spun back around. That is true. No need in worrying about what we can't control. Do you know why I bring this up, Patton? Logan questioned, folding his hands together once more. Patton shook his head curiously. I was always bothered by the fact that I never found out why, but Virgil told me something that helps him in his issues that I feel I can apply to you and further help your dilemma. Logan leaned forward and stared at Patton. Your feelings, whatever they are normal and valid. Just being mindful and aware of them and focusing on how to get better, even if it's something like taking a day to relax, can help you down the road. Patton smiled a bit and looked down at his hands. Virgil told you that? He is quite surprising sometimes. Patton nodded and felt himself relax just a bit. I came in here because I didn't want to be alone. My thoughts are all a mess and I can't sort anything out. Would you like me to help distract you? Patton shrugged, keeping his eyes diverted. Or perhaps talking about it a little may help? There's nothing to say. 3 doesn't remember much of it, and, but we saw and felt it happen. So, what was it like for all of you? Perhaps your conflicted memory of the event, seeing it and experiencing it in so many ways, has confused you. Patton looked up and saw Logan leaning forward far in his chair, partially hunched over and brow furrowed in concern. It wasn't a look he ever really saw, but Patton smiled seeing someone care so much. I don't know. His smile quickly wavered. 3 remembers. He closed his eyes and tried focusing on that night. They were trying to distract it from 5, and Patton shook his head. It's all static. That's all right, Patton. If you don't quite remember, then don't push yourself. No! Patton looked up and met eyes with Logan. The sound of static, it just grew louder. 3 couldn't think of anything else. They don't remember anything after that until Roman shocked the thing out of it. Patton placed a hand on his chest and faintly felt his heart racing. There is one thing, though. They sat in silence as Patton's eyes shifted around, memories flashing and blurring together. I felt something that night. It's hard to describe. It's like my head was all light and floaty, but my side was in pain, like pins and needles. You know when you sleep on your arm or your leg goes to sleep and it feels weird? Like, that was the part of me that was 3, and that's what he felt. The physical embodiment of static, perhaps? Or like a thunderstorm? It's like a little angry storm cloud. The static could even be the rain. Patton smiled a bit. Makes it seem less scary than cloud snake monster we keep calling it. I do see how calling it an angry storm cloud could make it seem less intimidating. Patton looked up at Logan, sitting up taller than he had the entire time. It seems you are feeling a bit better. May I give a suggestion to help you? Logan stood up and walked over to Patton, extending a hand out. Patton smiled and grabbed it eagerly, practically bouncing off of the bed and standing up, turning towards the door. Logan kept quiet and brought Patton down the hall and into his room. He let go and motioned into the room. What's this? I need you to get into the most comfortable outfit you own. I'll meet you out into the living room momentarily. Logan quickly made his retreat, leaving a confused Patton behind. Logan walked around with purpose as he gathered a few things onto the couch. He finished adding a few pillows onto it and stopped as he turned around and saw Patton smiling back. Logan was speechless, and Patton's smile grew more, knowing what was causing it. What's wrong? A cat got your tongue. Why on earth do you own that? I like cats. I thought you were allergic. Patton danced around in his cat onesie a bit. This is the closest I can get to an actual cat. Not true. Have you met a Sphinx cat? Known as the hairless cat. I'm sure you would love them. Despite their unusual appearance, they constantly radiate heat and tend to enjoy snuggling up. Traits I'm sure you would appreciate. Patton stopped and watched Logan, eyes shining brighter. Logan, can we get a... No pets are allowed on the lease. Patton, we cannot get a cat. Patton's shoulders fell, but it seemed as if he already knew what the answer was going to be and gave up without a fight. Would you like help setting it up? Patton glanced around at the blankets and pillows on the couch. Set up for what? I believe you'd call it a pillow fort? Patton gasped and started bouncing up and down. Will you join me? I have another onesie. That will not be. Please. Logan tried to say no, but Patton was giving him the look. Not the one he usually gave when he wanted something. The one he was sure Patton wasn't aware he gave. His eyes just lit up with excitement, and the pure joy on his face as he smiled caused Logan's heart to skip a beat as he sighed and resigned himself to his fate. That was enough of an answer to cause Patton to race back into his room without another word. Virgil was on the bus home from work when his phone went off. Distracting him from mindlessly gazing out the window, he removed it from his pocket and quickly typed in the passcode and clicked on his messages. He waited as a photo Roman sent him loaded as it vibrated a few more times, warning of more incoming messages. The first photo finally loaded as the others began to pop up, and Virgil bit his lip and slapped a hand over his mouth. The first was a photo of Logan and Patton in a fort on the ground with Logan's laptop, both of them looking up in surprise as if they hadn't realized Roman was there. Both of them were sporting onesies, no doubt Patton's. Quickly, he responded a quick comment about Logan makes a wonderful unicorn before the other photos loaded. It was a quick story of Logan jumping up in surprise to stop Roman and causing the fort to fall on both of them, trapping them underneath a blanket. The last photo showed their apartment door with the caption, "Just got locked out." Virgil quickly typed back that he had a key, but Roman was determined to give their roommates some time together to lick their wounds and clean up. A quick suggestion of going to the store to buy some things and kill time was offered when Virgil decided to take him up on. Logan, in a sour mood, was no fun for anyone, and Patton probably was the only one who could snap him out of it. He watched as Roman gets onto the bus at a stop he normally hopped off at, leaning over and waving at him to join him in the open seat. Roman eagerly ran over and retold the story of what exactly he had walked into. Roman had a tendency to add flair to everything, so a few stops later, they were getting off, and Roman was only just finishing, making sure he didn't miss a single detail. Then I made a comment about how he likes to wear ties and should wear one while wearing the onesie, and Patton agreed with me. It just made him turn even redder, and then he just pushed me out the front door, which normally wouldn't have been so easy, but I was too busy laughing to fight back, and locked me out. I need to see that, but I doubt he's ever going to wear it again. I don't know. If Patton asks, he will. He doesn't fall for the puppy dog eyes all the time, Rue. Roman snickered at that and kept laughing, not saying a word. Well, the least we could do is pick up something for dinner. Patton is supposed to be relaxing today anyway. In a pillow fort, wearing a onesie, watching movies, and he convinced Logan, of all people, to join him. Virgil shook his head as they approached the store, heading for the handbaskets. He's gotta tell us his secret to getting people to just do that. There's gotta be a trick to those puppy dog eyes. A pure soul. You're out of luck there. Virgil rolled his eyes and spun around, facing Roman. What? My soul isn't pure enough for you, Princey? Roman's response was cut off by laughter, grabbing the attention of both of them. A man who had been approaching them wearing a button-down shirt was smiling, his laugh wavering off. Roman eyed him cautiously but gave a smile. Your soul is as pure as molasses, Virgil. Roman's expression dropped as he turned to Virgil, watching his roommate's face light up. Oh, shut it. What do you know? The man walked forward, and they shook hands, both smiling brightly. How are you? Fine. Surprised to see you here shopping for groceries in this part of town. I moved out. Virgil motioned his head towards Roman. This is one of my roommates. Not one to miss an opportunity, Roman took a step forward, extending his hand in a greeting. Roman, a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Alex, nice to meet a friend of Virgil's. The man shook his hand and leaned in a bit. Between you and me, he doesn't make many friends. Alex dropped Roman's hand just in time to see Virgil playfully nudge the other. Oh, come on, you know it's true. That's for calling me out on it. Virgil shifted closer to Roman, smirk still on his face. You still nerding it up? Like you need to ask. The two talked back and forth, Roman watching on curiously, but keeping to the side. There weren't many people Virgil felt comfortable around, but it wasn't surprising to see him with a stranger Roman haven't even heard of, completely open and calm. He hadn't been paying attention when they both turned to him expectantly. I'm sorry, what was that? You got laid off from that IT place downtown last year. Roman blinked, surprised. His past job had even been mentioned at all. Oh, yes, no matter. It takes more than that to keep me off my feet. Yes. Well, consider yourself lucky. Alex crossed his arms in front of him. They merged with another company to save themselves from bankruptcy, and it's been torture ever since. I just was able to get out myself and get a new job. Wait, you worked there as well? Yeah, a bit longer than you. Guess my standards were just low enough for them to keep me. They booted anyone they thought might jump ship immediately. I suddenly feel much better about the whole situation. Wait, I thought you lived with your parents outside of the city. You worked at the firm downtown? Virgil cut in. Roman was surprised he even remembered that tidbit of information. Yes, well, I drove, obviously. I didn't know you could drive, Virgil muttered to himself. No one who lives in the city actually drives. What happened to your ride? Sold it, Roman shrugged. I was unemployed for a while. How else do you think I could afford my share of the deposit and rent when I moved in? Virgil looked thoughtful before nodding at a bit of information. So, how do you two know each other other than... Virgil quickly covered his mouth, hiding from the snicker he let out. Alex simply smiled back and shrugged. We dated for a while. Virgil's smile grew as he watched Roman's face fall at the new information. That surprise you, Ro? Oh! Roman forced a smile, brushing off the comment. A bit. I'm just surprised you never talk about him, but you speak to him with such a friendly tone. Well, we wanted different things, Alex stated. Talked it through and broke it off mutually. Sucked for a bit, but we only dated for what? A year? Virgil had enough of watching Roman speechless as his thoughts tried to catch up to him. Here, take the basket. I'll catch up in just a minute. Roman nodded and waved his goodbyes, a hearty farewell to Alex, and headed deeper into the store. Roman had barely turned down an aisle out of view before Virgil's smile completely Drop it. Aw, Virg, you like him, don't you? Alex playfully lets out. Gonna say, a bit jealous. He's cute. Shut it. You and I both know I'm happily dating someone else, and she's wonderful. Alex patted Virgil on the back. I know how you are. Just ask him out. Doesn't even have to be a date. Get a feel for what you think he may be interested in. You know, he might just say yes. In a few aisles over, Roman was frantically typing away at his phone. Patton, he muttered as he typed. SOS, need to talk. When I get home, send. Roman held up his phone and glanced over his shoulder to make sure no one was there. Seeing the aisle empty, he sighed and wandered further into it. They were home fairly quickly, Virgil catching up to Roman soon after, and them settling on something for dinner. They grabbed everything and took the quick bus home, Roman texting Logan, warning that didn't earn a response back, knowing full well that Logan always checks his phone and just didn't want to answer back. They walked in, and Virgil saw the living room in its usual state. All signs of pillows and blankets were gone. They walked into the kitchen and saw Patton and Logan sitting and talking. Without a word, Roman watched as Logan grew a bit pale and turned away in embarrassment before turning and cooking dinner for the four of them. Patton kept looking at him expectantly, but he waved it off as long as he could, knowing they could talk later. Virgil offered to clean up, and Logan offered to help, giving Patton the opportunity to grab Roman and drag him away. They were hardly in Patton's room before he spun around and grew serious. Roman, are you okay? No! Roman turned and fell backward into Patton's bed, his hand falling over his eyes. It's terrible, Patton. I've been cursed. Cursed? A man like me, beautiful with such charm, I can have anyone I set my heart on. Roman's hands both clutched his chest. Except my heart chose the one I cannot have. Patton blinked and watched Roman being dramatic before breaking out into a smile. Aw, Roman, I'm sure they like you back. You just have to ask them to give you a chance. Patton hopped back into his bed next to Roman. So, who's the lucky fella? Roman's face scrunched up as he had just eaten something sour. Virgil. Patton let out a gasp, covering his mouth with his hands. The gasp quickly turned into a high-pitched squeal of excitement as he waved his hands back and forth. Oh my goodness, this is so cute! Oh my gosh, you two would be so cute together. I'm sure he will go out on the date with you. Roman looked up at Patton as he bounced on his bed in excitement before sighing and sitting up with a small smile. I wouldn't even know how to ask him. Come on, Roman. I believe in you. You just have to ask. You'll never know unless you do. Roman frowned and stood up. You're right. He turned towards Patton and started to smile once more. I'm Roman. I stand up to villains and criminals every night. That's right. I can do anything. Well, I'll go and ask him right now. Roman marched out of Patton's room, leaving the other concerned as he sat on his bed. Oh, dear. Rowan marched into the kitchen and saw Logan washing up the dishes. Alone. Where's Virgil? Went to retrieve something from his room. Rowan marched down the hall a bit further, knocked twice on Virgil's door, not waiting for an answer, and walking in. Virgil, there is something we must discuss. What's up? Rowan froze as Virgil stood there, his hoodie in his hands, and his hand in his hair as he attempted to fix it. Nothing out of the ordinary, but seeing him completely relaxed threw off Rowan to the point that his confidence melted away. I just wanted... You okay, Ro? Virgil asked with a look of concern. Rowan watched as his eyes flickered across Rowan's face, inspecting for any sign of distress that he could see, just knowing he always was looking out, taking care of and trying to protect them. Yes, I just wanted to ask if I could, if you wanted, we maybe could... Never mind. Rowan quickly spun around and ran out, slamming the door closed behind him. Virgil blinked confused, standing in his room, now alone and completely lost, having never heard Rowan at such a loss for words. Rowan quickly marched back to the other side of the apartment and turned to Patton's room, falling dramatically back onto Patton's bed, burying his face in the blankets. So, how did it go? Rowan groaned loudly, curled up into a ball. I'm hopeless. That's not true. Patton leaned over and rubbed Rowan's back. You just have to think about how you would want to ask him first. I could stare a man with a knife down, no sweat, but just looking at Virgil made me get all tongue-tied. What am I going to say if I can't say anything? There, it's okay, Rowan. You're smart. You'll think of something. Can't I just crawl under the blankets and hide away forever? Thank you so much for listening. If you want to stay tuned for the next chapter, subscribe, because I feel tomorrow might be when the next chapter comes out, if patterns were anything to guess by. So the book will be done within the next week. Hooray! With that being said, thank you for listening, and much like all of the sides trying to profess their love for one another, do your best.